Hello and welcome. My name is Nan Richardson, and on behalf of MTNA and NPF, and along with the RMM committee members Richard Rahino, Dr. Emily Book-McGree, and Dr. Rebecca Carter-Bolello, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar titled Remarkable Resources, Part 2. We are so fortunate today to have 9 presenters throughout this hour, and each presenter is going to share a resource that he or she has found valuable in their teaching. The resources shared today are very diverse. They range from websites to collections of literature, manipulatives, software, and to that point, it is our hope that you will discover a resource that sparks your interest and that you can in turn go ahead and utilize and enhance your own teaching.
Person's talking.
Back in October, there was a webinar titled Remarkable Resources Part 1, and a recording of that webinar is available on pianonet.com. Likewise, today's webinar will also be available on pianonet.com. And just a few announcements before we just get started and get underway. First of all, thank you so much for staying on mute. Second, if you have a question today while a presenter is sharing his or her resource, go ahead and type that question into the chat because someone else might have the same question. And then it is very likely that that presenter can respond to your question during the webinar. The chat box will also be shared on pianonet.com later for your reference. For those of you who currently teach any type of group piano or any type of RMM class, please take a look at the Pedagogy Saturday schedule for the 2022 MTNA National Conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota, because we have an excellent lineup of workshops, of presenters, of teaching demonstrations, all associated with RMM and with group teaching. There are several scholarships available in the range of $300 to $500, and that can aid in travel or hotel costs. And if you are interested in RMM and group piano and interested in applying and learning about those scholarships, check out the chat box because Richard Rahino is going to paste a link that will lead you to learning about those scholarships and also the application process. So as we begin the webinar, each presenter today will do a quick self-introduction, and then when their short 5-minute presentation has concluded, they will quickly pass the baton to the next presenter. So let's get going. I'll be the first presenter, and again, my name is Nan Richardson, and I come to you today from Salisbury, Maryland. I teach in a variety of settings. I am on piano faculty at Salisbury University. I also teach general elementary music for pre-K through second graders. And then finally, I maintain a small private adult studio, largely for RMM learners. Today, the following resource that I would like to share with you is called Keys to Artistic Performance. As you can see, there are 3 books in this series, and each book changes from level of ability. Keys to Artistic Performance was published in 2009 by Alfred Publishing, and it is by Ingrid Clarefield and Dennis Alexander. This series can certainly be used effectively with any age, but I like to use it specifically with adult students. Book 1, early intermediate through intermediate. Book 2 progresses intermediate through late intermediate repertoire. And then finally, book 3 takes it a step further, late intermediate through the early advanced levels. The purpose of this series is to take a performance that's okay, where the notes are accurate, the rhythm is accurate, dynamics are being observed, but to transform a performance that is just medium into a polished performance, into an exciting performance, into an artistic performance. And the author, Ingrid Clarefield, likes to do this through the use of 5 keys for achieving performance artistry. Those are listed here: color, pedaling, rubato, characterization, and then finally choreography. I'm going to focus on the final two because, in my opinion, those two are very abstract and difficult to teach, especially to an analytical adult learner. All right, so for characterization within a piece of repertoire, when a student performs something that's accurate but boring, it's hard to say to a student, wow, let's insert some character into your piece. Let's put a mood, let's create a mood for that piece. Well, that's so abstract. What does that exactly mean? And Ingrid Clarefield gives some tangible ways to address characterization. The first way is at the beginning of the book, there is a lovely list of descriptive words that the students are invited to refer back to. At the beginning of many of the pieces, there is just a blank line, and the student is asked to choose one of these words and insert it so that mood and character is addressed from the beginning and not something that's inserted later after notes and rhythms and dynamics have been practiced and observed. Students are also encouraged to think of a story, and that's probably no news to anybody, but I love the step that Ingrid Clarefield takes in writing lyrics to the melody. Most of these pieces have Ingrid Clarefield lyrics for the first 8 bars or so, and there is an example of that on this slide from Gurlitt's album for the young. The first 8 bars are lyrics, and I will share those with you right now.
See all the flowers being golden white. They need some water and lots of light.
The students are then encouraged and continue the lyrics on their own. Usually 8 bars is as far as the author goes. That really helps students bring out a melody or think more creatively about including a character or a mood. And then the last key to artistic performance in the series is choreography. And we all know that performing is also visual. It's not just something that we're hearing. It's not just music that we're hearing, but it's visual. And so the way a performer moves can affect what the audience hears. That can be really difficult for a reserved student to move. And not only can movement prepare an audience for a mood, but movement can also help a performer create a mood. You can see in the bottom square of this screen, this series comes along with choreography symbols that are strategically placed throughout a score. So there's lean to the right and lean to the left, lean forward, lean back, arc, freeze, and you could read about them. But this specific example from the Schubert Waltz, you're going to see me lean forward, as you can see in bars 1 and 2. I'm going to lean forward on beat 2. And then you also see that characterization from key number 4. There are lyrics to the melodic line.
Dance with me, dance in 3 accents here, and gracefully we gently start anew, then we do turn around once again.
Well, I highly recommend this series, and I hope you can use it in your own teaching if you don't already. I'd like to take this moment and pass it along to Paula Flynn.
Hello, can you see me? It says I'm unable to start my video, so this could be awkward. Yowza. Okay, now can I start since I'm the co-host? Aha! Ha! I have a face. Okay. Hi, my name is Paula Flynn, and I just want to say thank you to the National Piano Foundation and the Music Teachers National Association for inviting me to present today one of my favorite remarkable resources in this second edition of the webinar. And I am the president of the Wyoming Music Teachers Association. I am the adjunct instructor of piano at Casper College, and I am the owner-operator of the Way Out West Music Academy in Glen Rock, Wyoming. Now, the resource that I'm going to share with you today is an amalgamation of many different manipulatives, and all I want all of you to realize is you can use virtually anything that fits on a key on the keyboard. Just because I'm using this particular manipulative does not mean that you have to use exactly this. So your creativity and your imagination is paramount. Okay, so this resource does not take up much room in my studio, and if your studio is compact and small and shelving space is a key, then this is the manipulative for you. It takes up this much space. It's just a tiny, tiny little jar of tiny, tiny little critters. Mr. Elephant. We've got dinosaurs. I found these at Murdoch's, which is a ranch and farm store in the area, but we've got dinosaurs. What little fella isn't going to fall in love with a dinosaur? I don't know. But I like them because you have everything from exotic flamingos to dinosaurs and dragons, your domestic animals like cows and horses, but they're just tiny and they fit perfectly on a key. Can you see Miss Flamingo sitting there? Whoops, my finger's in the way. Little Miss Flamingo sitting on the key. She's so happy. She even fits perfectly up on the black keys. Ah, it's wonderful. Love her. Anyway, so Frances Clark is known in her pedagogic order of saying sound, feel, symbol, name. So if we are presenting new concepts and we're not giving our students the idea of the sound first, we're not helping them. So I'm singing do, do, re for months before I ever start introducing the concept of a second and a line note to a space note. I'm singing do, do, re, my neighbor is do, do, re. My students are grabbing onto this sound. Then when we start manipulating that on the keyboard, they're placing two of their little critters and they're then singing do, do, re, my neighbors, do, do, re, and they instantly see that connection and they're successful. So just some ideas on how to use these manipulatives beyond that early one. I like to let them pick out a critter that would make a high sound and a critter that might make a low sound, or a critter that flies really high in the sky and a critter that swims deep low in the sea, and then let them place those at the ends of the piano that make sense to them, the high end and the low end. And they every week come in and they pick out their two critters and they put them on the appropriate ends of the piano, and they're constantly being reinforced where my high sounds are, where my low sounds are. And they can do this. I don't care if they do this for 3 years. Doesn't bother me. Let them have their say. When we're building topography on the keyboard, not just high and low sounds, but two and three black key sets. Good grief. Or the white key placement, let them pick their favorite animal, unless you have like an A for aardvark. I wasn't able to find an aardvark, so I let them pick out their favorite animal. And then there's a myriad number of animals, and like B could be the butterfly, and C is the chicken, and D is the dolphin. So you're reinforcing their just natural language building skills, but you're also giving them white key placements. You can reinforce the whole step and the half step. Obviously, we're going to be singing do to re, do to ra, and mi to fa, mi to fi a lot. So we're hearing those changes in the whole step, half step sound long before we start manipulating half steps and whole steps. But then they can see how close the half step critters live to each other versus how far apart the whole step critters live to each other. And it gives them that visual concept long before they have to start manipulating it in their hands. Major, and then you can take that into the major and minor 5-finger patterns. As a teacher, I can set the tonic up, and then we've gone over that. We've been singing do, re, mi, fa, so for a long time. They know where that mi, fa is, that little half step, and they can start manipulating their manipulatives on the keyboard itself. You can expand their knowledge of major and minors through solfege first and then manipulate it into full scale patterns. I love to use my my manipulatives for ear training. I will set one critter up on, let's say, G. We'll set Miss Flamingo up on G, and then I'll go to the keyboard and play an interval, and they have to take their critter and put their critter on the appropriate interval, either above or below, depending on what I did. And that will get your intermediate students, whew, that'll trick them several times over a day, especially once you start getting into the altered intervals with the minors and the augmented fourths and those tritones. They love those things. Building off the concept of major and minor 5-finger patterns, you can also build your triads and inversions, allowing them for weeks before they start having to play them to see how those critters just move from one C to the next C, and how that chord is changing through the inversion. Give them that visual long before you expect their hand to do it. My older students will use it, use the manipulatives in learning the modes of a particular key. Let's just use C as an example. You know, your C Ionian, and then you take C and D and take them off the bottom, put them up on the top. So now you have E to E is your scale, and they start singing on mi and sing mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, mi, or ti, do, re, mi, up and down, and they hear that and they're visualizing it long before they have to manipulate it. As I said earlier, this tip is just the iceberg. Any of these tips are just the iceberg of what can be done with a manipulative that fits on a keyboard. Your imagination, your creativity can take your students into all sorts of concepts, concept drilling and reinforcement. I encourage all of you to use some form of manipulative with your students each lesson. It takes 1, maybe 2 minutes tops, and it can help them visualize concepts long before they have to play them. You can gamify these concepts and manipulatives in group class situations, but it helps everything snap into place long before they have to play it. So thank you for indulging me today and letting me prattle on and on, but I want to now turn it over to, I believe, Maggie Young.
Hey everyone, I am gonna ask if you wouldn't mind, can you see my screen? Perfect. One of the resources that I have really enjoyed using over the last 18 months has been Mentimeter. So if you have a spare device, or if you want to open up another browser on your computer, either scan this QR code and follow the directions to the website, or go to www.menti.com. And the code that we're going to be using for today's kind of presentation or exploration is 72006388. Okay, so as we kind of go through this whole process, the instructions are going to be at the very top. So as I advance to a different screen, they'll at least be able to continue following along where we are. All right, I see some hearts going. That's how I know we're doing it right. Okay. So I just want to start by asking, who are you teaching? Okay, so you should have this available to you. You can answer. Let's go with, who are you teaching predominantly? I know many of us teach a variety of ages, but we'll just go, at least for today, with who are you teaching most frequently? One of the advantages of using a program like Mentimeter is that you get real-time results. So when you're working with students, especially groups of students, you can see in real time how they're responding. Looks like we've got 32 responses. I'm going to wait about another 15, 20 seconds and see if we get a couple more kind of drifting in before we move to our next slide. All right, it looks like young children are our big winners for the day. So lots of teachers of young children. I'm going to move forward so that we get a chance to kind of go through the rest of our items. And this next question is going to cause a little bit more writing. So we'll give a little bit more time. So here we go. What has been your biggest challenge as a teacher since March of 2020? I know that, this transition to COVID and teaching online or teaching predominantly online or with masks or however it was that you were teaching really shifted. And in this slide, you can use a couple phrases that you want. You could write me a dissertation if you wanted, but I only have 5 minutes. It would be the world's fastest dissertation ever written. Overscheduled kids. Oh, yes. Look at all of these issues. As these different kind of words pop on the screen, those that are larger are those that are more common amongst our 2021 participants. So getting new students, my own energy or fatigue. Oh, I'm feeling that today. Using my inside voice while teaching. Oh, for sure. Patience, motivation, cameras or different technologies. Oh my goodness. I think we can all relate to so many of these different issues, all these different challenges. Of course, they're providing us with new opportunities to think about how we're going about providing musical experiences. But oh no, I see some burnout and it's a pretty big one. Maybe that's the next webinar that MTNA puts forward. Yeah. All right, one more minute or a couple more seconds, and then I'm going to move on and kind of tell you how it is that I use this with my students and in my teaching. Getting students excited, overwhelmed with technology. Yes. All right, 37, amazing. Okay, so online lessons or virtual lessons and technology those are our primary challenges. Amazing. So I'm just going to keep moving forward because I only have 5 minutes. Otherwise, I would sit on that for forever and really start digging into some of those questions. So why Mentimeter? First, I have found that student engagement has taken a bit of a hit since we moved to emergency online instruction, and then this kind of revamping what it is that we do on a day-to-day basis since March of 2020 has really kind of changed the way in which students engage with material. I find that Mentimeter is a really easy way to organize content delivery, especially if I'm trying to do something for a larger class. And it also helps me kind of plan in some instructional variety, some opportunities to pause, to reflect, to get students involved within what it is that I'm trying to teach them or trying to get them to learn. And Mentimeter has some pretty clear applications in a larger group class. I use it with my lecture students. I do teach at Ohio State Lima, where I teach music appreciation and group piano classes. I also teach some individual lessons as well. And I have found that I use Mentimeter not only with those group classes, but also in private lessons. I'll leave a Mentimeter up for the week where I am asking just for a little check-in. How are you doing today? And that discursive, those responses from the students, like I'm exhausted, I'm tired, it's helpful for students to know that they're not alone. Students can see what some of those responses are. And it also has the benefit of being completely anonymous. So students aren't figuring out what their friends are feeling or what they're struggling with. And so it provides a way for them to kind of give voice to things that they're facing, problems that they might be having, questions they might be having with material without having to identify themselves as the person who's needing help. I've also used it not only on this webinar now, so this is the second time I've used this in a presentation, but we used it as part of a conference presentation. So we got some immediate feedback on some research that we were presenting to a group of music educators. So I really have found that Mentimeter has been a fantastic way for me to engage with students and to engage with others in the discipline. So give it a shot. It's free to use. You can use 2 questions per slide unless you want to pay for the kind of pro version of Mentimeter. Otherwise, if you're only using it for quick check-ins or some brief questions that you want to ask students, it's free to use. Thanks for letting me participate. And now on to Bill with our next remarkable resource.
All right, so Bill could not be with us today, so he has sent in a video, and I'm going to share my screen and show you this video that Bill has sent for us. So here we go.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Badai, and I teach piano here at Campbellsville University in Campbellsville, Kentucky. And I just want to thank Nan for inviting me to participate in today's webinar. Today, I'd like to share with you 2 of my favorite resources. Really, what I want to do is talk with you about how you can use these 2 resources to do one of my favorite activities, which is teaching theory through the repertoire. You know, as students move from beginning level method books into the intermediate level of music, we as teachers need to be able to teach and incorporate the theory in and through the literature. And that's what I like about these 2 books, is that they make this really easy to do. The first book here is called Modes and Moods by Robert Vandal. Now, by the time the students are at the intermediate level, they're already very familiar with 2 tonalities, major and minor. And then at some point in the lesson, I mentioned that there are other possibilities, other tonalities called modes. And of course, this kind of blows their brain for a second. And then hopefully that sparks an interest in the idea of modes and modal music. So here I introduce this book. This book is a fabulous collection of 7 pieces, one written in each of the modes. There are 7 modes, so 7 pieces. And they're written in a way I think that perfectly captures the essence or the sound of that mode. We can discuss whole steps and half steps all day, right? But it's not until the student experiences the sound that they understand what Dorian is, or what Phrygian is, or even what major or minor is, right? So the question is, what does Phrygian sound like? And this book addresses that. In this book, he begins with an overview of sorts of the 7 different modes, all though related to the key of C. So as a result, the entire book, every single piece is on the white keys. There are no black keys, and there are no accidentals anywhere in the book. Because of time, I want to jump to number 4. This is the first couple to give you an idea of how it looks. The 4th one, Lydian Nocturne, is really a beautiful piece. Now, if a student, again, were to learn this scale, this mode, just by half steps and whole steps, and then play as it's written on top of the page, I'm sure they'd get to that B and they would think, that's a wrong note. It sounds funny. They'd hesitate. They'd want to fix that note, right? But the beauty is that in this context and this setting, Vandal perfectly captures the Lydian sound. Let me just play a little bit for you of the opening. So really, it's a great introduction to the idea of modes. My second book as a way of teaching theory is this book by Lee Evans. It's called 12-tone waltzes. And many of you are probably already familiar with Lee Evans for his jazz style, the jazz-influenced intermediate repertoire for pianists. But let me introduce you to a whole new side of Lee Evans. Now, I realize that 12-tone music isn't necessarily everyone's cup of tea, but it is an important style of music and compositional technique that many composers have utilized throughout the 20th and 21st century. However, the problem, of course, is that much of the piano repertoire that uses 12-tone technique is crazy difficult to play. But that's not the case with this book, which makes it a great introduction for intermediate students. The book begins with a really, really nice overview and explanation of the 12-tone method, the technique, what a tone row is, how it can be used. He then provides 3 waltzes: the half-a-minute waltz, the Not by Strauss waltz, and an atonal waltz. What's great about these pieces is that you can learn all about the concept of tone rows and how they can be manipulated in a composition while actually learning and performing the composition. And to help with this, Evans actually includes as well an analysis of each of the waltzes in the book. So you can see exactly what the row is and how it's being manipulated throughout the piece. And then for the budding composer, he has at the end of the book a little outline to help the student create their own 12-tone composition. So I think this is also a fantastic resource, especially for 12-tone music. So again, there are many pieces in literature that you can use to teach theory, different theory concepts. When it comes to modes or 12-tone music, these are a couple of my favorites, and I hope you found them interesting or useful for your teaching. And I would certainly love to hear from you about what resources, what literature you use to teach various theory concepts. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening, and we will now move to our next presenter.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emily, and I'm joining you today from just outside Boulder, Colorado. I have a small private studio here, but I also am the director of the pedagogy program and the piano preparatory program at Lamont School of Music at the University of Denver. We do lots of group teaching there for kiddos and adults. And one of the things that I'm going to share with you today is something we used in a group class just on Sunday, so hopefully it will be useful to everyone. Now, this time of year, I saw the burnout happen on Maggie's printouts. It is real, y'all. So for me, I am constantly right now at this time of year looking for games that I can print and set up. Totally prep in under 5 to 10 minutes. So super, super quick games. And the ones that are also adaptable to a lot of different levels. I teach a lot of stacked group classes where I'm going from one level to another for a few hours at a time. So games that I can adapt to lots of different levels and age groups are really important to me. Where I go to find some of these, here are my list of go-tos. So you all are probably familiar with a lot of these. Melody Payne and Leela Viss, those are two authors of websites. So it's melodypayne.com and leelaviss.com. Hopefully you all are familiar with those two ladies. If you're not, check them out immediately because there's lots of games on those websites and boom cards and things that I access regularly for private and group classes. So wonderful resources there. The game that I want to spotlight for you today is actually from Teach Piano Today, the bottom website on this list, which is the kind of companion website to Wonder Keys. But they have a lot of really fabulous print-offs and games that you can access through that website, even if you're not using the Wonder Keys methodology. Or method books there. The other thing that I am always considering, at least in my teaching world right now, during this time of year, is using games that are winter focused and not just Christmas focused. I have a lot of folks students who are not, they don't practice, they don't observe Christmas. And I don't ever want to assume that that's going to happen in my group class or place them in a position of being uncomfortable by saying, this is not something my family celebrates. So I'm always looking for some winter games, and the one that I'm going to show you today, super duper simple. It's called Marshmallow Measures. It is free on the Teach Piano website, and it comes literally in 2 different pages: a treble clef, like you see on your screen there, and then one in bass clef too. And then there's a circle in the middle, as you can see, for some itty bitty marshmallows. This works with mini marshmallows. It works with M&Ms. It works with chocolate chips. It works with Smarties. I usually have a collection of candies that I bring with me to either private lessons or group classes, and then I let the students pick. I love that it's got a little circle in the middle, so that we got to keep the candy contained, and we can't put them in our mouth just yet. So it provides some structure and parameters for control there. Some different ways that I use this. First of all, again, really simple. I use solo cups with popsicle sticks inside. And these can be as simple as, okay, we're learning FED on the staff, and this could be treble clef or bass clef. So I have a stack of leveled popsicle sticks in each one of the solo cups, and students just pick it out. They place their mini marshmallows or their M&Ms or whatever they're using on the staff. I check it, then they move on. here is a picture of our kiddos playing it in group class on Sunday. And again, you can make this as easy or as hard as you want to. You can do guide notes, landmark notes, treble clef, bass clef, steps, skips, whatever it is that you're working on. As students progress, then I give them just one solo cup where they have to pick popsicle sticks from, where I dictate treble clef or bass clef. So they've got both pages in front of them, and then they move back and forth depending on what clef they draw, and that forces them to really shift quite well. We do intervals, so maybe I've got another level of a different solo cup stacked for that teaching day, and we're going to work just on intervals. And then these guys that you see here are actually doing oral skills. So I am playing something on the keyboard right next door to them, and they are doing some dictation exercises of writing those on the staff with their candies. So this is really easily adaptable to whatever it is that you're teaching, and really enforces their note reading outside the music that we're working on. So that's one thing that's been a big hit for us. I use it all winter long, and there are a lot of other games out there that are winter specific too on those websites. So hopefully that will be helpful to one of you out there when you're teaching in these upcoming busy weeks here. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton off to Leanne.
Hello, I'm also unable to start my video, so I'm also in that awkward position. It says the host has stopped it. Can y'all at least hear me? Okay, great. Anyone have help?
Try again, Leanne. You're co-host now.
Okay, cool. Let me try this. There we go. Hello, everyone. So my name is Dr. Leanne Osterkamp-Huh, and I'm a Steinway artist. Thank you so much for having me today. My roles have kind of changed a lot over the last few years because I've been moving a lot. When I was living in New York, I was working at Juilliard, and I was teaching undergrad and master's courses in group piano, and also everything from sight reading to figured bass to score reading, all of those extra keyboard skills. I then moved to Colorado, where I was the instrumental director at Regis Jesuit High School, and I worked pretty much in every capacity there as men's choir director, band director, orchestra director, advanced piano director, musical theater director, just anything you can imagine with that. And then I actually just moved to Seattle a month ago. And I here am currently doing a full private studio, and I also just launched my full-time business, Rio Piano, and that's an online teaching platform. And I also function as the Colorado State MTNA competition chair. So lots of different roles, and the reason I mention all of them is my tool is kind of something that I found in relation to all of these different types of teaching. Going from a conservatory aspect to a very large group learning aspect at a high school to private teaching, all kind of have different students at different levels with different interests in what they're learning, right? Sometimes they just want to pass the class, some are passionate about it. So what I ended up finding over my years of teaching was Jeopardy Labs, and I'm going to try to do screen sharing, so bear with me because sometimes technology is not always my friend. But I tested this morning, so we're going to try it. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. Perfect. So it's pretty easy to type in jeopardylabs.com, and you're of course welcome to type it into another browser, another device. And before Jeopardy Labs, and I found this wonderful website, I actually made my own Jeopardy boards just off of, Excel or whatever. And I would do it that way, but this just totally changed the game, especially during COVID. It's a great thing to use for virtual students. It's great for hybrid if you have students in the classroom and external, because you can project the screen and you can screen share it. It's just a really wonderful tool. So I'm going to show you kind of some possibilities that I've used with this platform, and then also kind of show you how it's played, which, I mean, obviously we all know Jeopardy, but it's kind of fun to see how it looks in real time. So what's great is it's completely free. They also have a ton of pre-made Jeopardy games. Some of them are okay music-wise. I'm not a huge fan of all of them, but if you're in a pinch for the last 3 minutes of class, it works. But if you create your own, you just create a password so that you can re-access it. So I'll just type in music or something. So start building. And this is what's great is that it gives you a blank template. If you kind of sticking with what Emily was saying, right? I love trying to do games that are more class focused instead of holiday focused sometimes, but can be silly. So you can call this, fun with music or something fun like that. What I love is that this is really capable for all ages, in the sense of, sorry, one second. In the sense of that you can kind of change everything to fit the different ages, even with some younger students. So, with some of my classes, I changed the money symbols to be really high up. Like I would, end up going for like $2 million, right? You can do random numbers that are like 1.6. But it also is a great way, with your very young students to get that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 thing, right? To get that idea of levels progressing. So let's just say we have 105 just for fun. And then you can name your category. So one of my favorites that I like to do is like Italian words, right? Trying to teach all of those skills. I like to mix it up. So where I have everything from composers, music history, music theory, identifying notes, trying to do things like parts of the piano, instruments in the orchestra. You can go as crazy as you want with this, as simple as you want with it. As you saw already when I clicked on that, you get to put in the prompt, and you can do it as a traditional Jeopardy thing where you put in the answer and then they have to answer it as a question, or vice versa. Let's say I'm teaching maybe a younger student that isn't quite as familiar with Jeopardy. I could say something like, what is the word we use for going fast, right? And then it would be something like allegro, perfect. And then what's fun is, right, I can keep going with that. I like to always put in a category, especially for my larger classes, that's a non-music category. So that if I have students that are maybe a little bit newer to music and are feeling a little kind of overwhelmed that they can't help their team or they are losing the game, that way they kind of have an access point, right? Like I've done types of noodles or, things that I've said in class, something silly like that to bring the fun back in. But then once you do that, right, you just click save and then bam, you're playing. So I'm going to show you one that I already created. What's great is you get a due amount of teams, so you can have students going individual if they want to compete against each other. Sometimes I have classes, freshmen versus seniors. I've had an orchestra string, like violins versus basses versus cellos. You can make it as low stakes as possible, which is what I recommend. I think, especially, I think we can all relate at holiday time. The thing that at big family gatherings brings everyone together is the games, right? It's like the low stake. We're not talking about anything that would infuriate anyone or any tension. It's fun. It's community building. So, use your kind of expertise on doing that. But then once we go, look how wonderful and professional this looks, right? You can have them name their teams. So I've had, of course, the Troublemakers before, and I've had Team Cello. And then as you go through, right, I'll go for composers for 100. And I made some of these a little trickier, right? So maybe this is for some of my college students. Maybe we talked about the different eras already. And then all I have to do is click the space bar, and bam, it gives them that wonderful thing. I've actually used this as a graded thing too for tests. So, if they get to exam time and they're a little bit stressed out about finals, this is a great way just to have a student do it in a more fun way, right? Like, let's take your final with Jeopardy. So let's say the Troublemakers got that. You can give them as many points as you want. It'll automatically put in the 100 or the 200. But if, let's say, 2 people answered it correctly, you can kind of fix that, right? Also, if someone yelled out the answer you didn't want them to, you can go negative too. So that's basically in a nutshell. It's fun to play around with. The idea is really, like I was saying, that I'm trying to find how to close out of this, but I can't. The way that it's really powerful is bringing your classes together and really trying to find an entry point, especially at the beginning of the year, if you're assessing students that may have some special learning needs that you need to address or ways of learning that you want to focus on. I also am able to identify through a game like this, you know, if maybe they learn better visually or they learn better with an auditory component. So really awesome tool, completely free, highly recommend it. And I would love to see the games that you guys create out of that. And I think I'm passing it off to John Price.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate being invited by MTNA and NPF to present to you today. I am a professor at Northwestern State University in Louisiana. So I teach group piano and applied piano here. And the resource I'm going to talk to you today about is called PlayScore 2. Okay, can everyone see that? This is an app, in short, I use a lot with my group piano students. There's a free version and a paid version. I'm going to talk about the free version first. With the free version, basically you can take your phone or your iPad, you can take a picture of the music, and it will instantly read and play back the music for you. So the free version, that one caveat is that's one page at a time for the free version. And then not only that, the music can be played back at any tempo for practice. So let me show you really quickly how this works. So this is the line sonatina. I'm sure many of you are familiar with. We do in group piano. So I just took a picture of this on my phone, and playback sounded like this. Okay, can you hear that a little bit better now? Okay, so here I'm changing the tempo. So all I did was I clicked the slider below to change the tempo. So just with the free version, you can use this. Some applications are for ensemble pieces, so you can have your students practice with the secondo or primo at any tempo. And you can also have your students check for, I use it for my group piano students to check for correct reading of notes and rhythm. And it's especially good for sight reading pieces and exercises. So it's not quite as good. It's not really as good for repertoire as a sound model, but it works really well, I think, for sight reading and for exercises, those kind of things. Okay, and then the paid version, there's a few extra features you get with the paid version. So there's productivity and professional, and they're slightly, have slightly different features. Okay, sorry, my video is, that's much better. Okay, so they have slightly different features, the productivity and the professional. I would suggest you get the professional if you're going to upgrade. It's only $5.99 a month, or about $25 a year, $26.99. And that allows you to do multiple staves and pages, PDF scores, or export to Music XML. And Music XML works with notation software like Sibelius, Finale, MuseScore, that kind of thing. Okay, so one feature you also get with the paid version is transposition. So here I have a group piano example that I use with my students. The first example I'm going to show you is auto transpose. So here we have E flat alto saxophone. You can see it doesn't sound very good. So I click the settings and then I go to auto transpose, and we'll play it again, hopefully this time in the right key. Okay, and you can also do manual transposition to any key. So this next example I'm going to show you, this is from Piano for the Developing Musician. So a lot of their sight reading examples, actually all of them, you transpose at the tritone. So here students can just take a picture of it, and first it'll play in the written key. Okay, now all I do is go to my settings. I click the little button on below, and then I can transpose it to any key. So in this case, I'm going down 6 half steps. So I'm transposing it to tritone. Great, so now we're in the key of F major. So just like all the other examples, group piano students, they can take that little example and then play it back at any tempo, which is really helpful for them to check that they're doing their notes correctly, they're transposing correctly, rhythms, those kind of things. So a couple of applications for the professional paid version. So rather than just taking pictures, it will also import PDF scores. So that means you can take something from ForScore, from IMSLP, and just directly import that into the application. Actually, usually works a little bit better than taking a picture. And then you can also export to Music XML. So that means after you take a picture, you have your PDF. It's really simple, one button, you export it to XML, and that means it can be read by Sibelius, by Finale, by MuseScore. So maybe with your applied students, great for theory exercises, for example. So students can take pictures of their theory exercises, and then they can work on them in MuseScore or something like that, rather than writing them by hand. So as a fun example, I took this first piece from Schubert's Winterreise, which is in D minor. Probably took me about 3 minutes. So I imported the PDF score right into Play Score, and then I exported it into a Music XML and transposed the whole thing in 3 minutes. Now I've got a printable version. Say I had a singer that wanted to sing in E minor instead of D minor. I have a printable version of that in just 3 minutes. So hopefully this is really helpful for you. You'll can use Play Score in your teaching at home. And yeah, I'll turn my timer now to Christina Whitlock. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm assuming we're still in the same boat with the video screen, but while I'm thinking about it, I am placing in the chat links that I'm sure you'll probably ask me for momentarily. And so my name is Christina Whitlock, and I am, let's see, I think, no. I have a large independent studio here in Muncie, Indiana, and I also oversee the piano pedagogy and prep programs over at Taylor University. And many of you know me because I host a weekly podcast for music teachers that is Beyond Measure with Christina Whitlock. And if you don't know about that podcast, I'd love for you to come join me over there so we have a good time. So today I want to talk about the fact that I have a lot of feelings about how teachers sometimes miss the mark on how to introduce the staff to our beginner students. And that's another topic for another day, but in a nutshell, it's the fact that we sometimes rely way too heavily upon whatever method book we are using to help inform our students how to figure out what this staff is all about. And I personally love to work way ahead of all of these concepts so that by the time my students see them in their method books, that's just review at that point, and they're already familiar with what they're seeing. And that for me is something that works out really, really well. And I just don't know a single method book that covers every single thing a student really needs to know to embrace the staff without a lot of fear. So, and I think that's fine. Like, we are competent teachers, right? We can teach this stuff without a book in front of us. So I wanted to introduce you today to 3 quick activities that I use in my studio. And they all involve the, drum roll please, a magnetic staff board. So this particular board comes from Easy Notes. I put the link to the website in there, and I do happen to know that they are running a 25% off sale with the code that I put in the chat. But this board I've had, I think, for over a decade. I've used this for a lot of times. There's also, I know that over at Musical Escapades, they have another great board as well. But this is dry erase and it's magnetic and all the good things, right? So really quickly, one of the things that my students are accustomed to doing very quickly is once we've had some amount of introduction to the staff, we work on a process of landmark notes, right? Like many of you do. So the very first thing my students do when they sit down at the piano is I will ask them, okay, can you find me middle C? And I'll hand them a magnet. And of course, they'll find middle C, right? And then we'll work through whatever landmark notes they are comfortable with at that point. And this doesn't sound revolutionary, I know, but the fact of actually physically having to take their little hands and put their landmark note on the G connects things in the brain that just looking at it on the page does not do, right? Locating middle C is so much better for a student than sitting there and just playing a piece that goes C, 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 C. That does nothing, right? So, but having to find it themselves week after week after week, my students become pretty fluid readers pretty quickly, just even by doing that. So I would recommend that. It takes less than 60 seconds at the start of a lesson. And I do that with my students pretty far down the line, like through all of my elementary students. They keep doing that every lesson. We extend out. Ultimately, my landmarks are, let me grab my other magnets. I use C, G, C, and G at the top, and then C, F, C, and F. And so eventually we mix these all around. I'll have them play examples. I'll switch them around, that kind of thing. Use your imagination, have fun. Number two, again, something really simple, but how many of us spend lots of time in our lessons trying to get students to find their hand position to begin their piece, right? Now, you can sit there and ask your student, okay, what note does it say number 2 goes on? And you can let them sit there for a solid 3 minutes while they think about it. Or try this, I'm begging you, try this. Just have the magnet board next to their music, and I will say, okay, can you place this magnet on your right hand's first note over here, right? So if it's E, I'm wanting them to get this magnet to this bottom line of the treble staff, right? You will be amazed how many of your students can't do that, at least at first. There is a disconnect somewhere in there, and we don't have time to talk about why that is, but just being able to say, okay, here in my printed score, that note is on the bottom line of the treble staff, and being able to find it is very difficult for some students. And you wouldn't know that it was difficult until you asked them to do that. All right, so again, it's just reinforcing skills coming from a different place. And that's a really great thing. Very simply put, step number 3, I do a ton. Again, probably every lesson with most of my elementary students, I will build them patterns to play, right? So of course, many of the publishers have sight reading cards and lots of resources that do this for you, but this is infinite, right? I can mix up as many possibilities with as many notes as I want, and I can keep the excerpts as short or as long as I need, and it's a big time win, right? So use your magnet boards. If you don't have one, you need one. Listen to the podcast. And I thank you all for your time today. I'm going to throw it over to Rebecca.
All right, thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Bolello, and I'm very glad to be joining you today from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And here I teach in my studio Piano Pathways. I teach private lessons and also group classes. And I'm also teaching piano pedagogy as an adjunct professor at Louisiana State University. So the resource that I would like to share with you today is called Internet MIDI. And this is a software program from the company Time Warp Technologies. You are probably familiar with the owner of the company. That's George Litterst. He's the tech guru that you have probably attended his sessions at a national conference or read his articles in our music teachers journals. So Internet MIDI, let me tell you about the software. It is an invaluable tool if, number one, you are teaching piano online, and number two, if you and your student both have a MIDI capable instrument. So you have to have something like a keyboard or a clavinova or a hybrid piano. And that's where I'm sitting at today, and it's in front of me. A disc clavier is also a MIDI capable instrument, but none of my students have a disc clavier. So we utilize those other instruments. So if you have both of those things, Internet MIDI may be something you want to check out. So Internet MIDI is a software program that allows those two instruments to connect together over the internet. So then you're essentially playing the other person's keyboard or piano. So when you're playing your piano from your location, those same notes are played simultaneously on the remote keyboard for who you're connected with. So it's like you're in two places at once, playing your piano and playing on the other piano as well. So the sound that the person is hearing on the other end, that sound is actually coming from their piano itself. It's not coming from the video conferencing platform that you're using. It bypasses that video conferencing. You still need to use a platform like FaceTime or Zoom to see and to talk with the student, but both ends of the connection will also need Internet MIDI. So that means you and your student on the other end will both need that software. So let me show you Internet MIDI. Now let me get this pulled up and I will do a quick screen share. So this is what Internet MIDI looks like when you first open it. You're going to want to make sure that your piano is connected to your computer by just a USB cable. So you're going to connect those things. And then when you open Internet MIDI, you're in this view, which is called your MIDI setup view. This is how it opens by default. And then I'm going to change my MIDI input device and my output device to my hybrid piano sounds. And then I'm going to change my view up here at the top. I tell my students it's the globe. The real name for it is the internet connection view. And so I have my buddy name, my password to log in. I've made myself available. And then I would tell my student from my buddy list to send me the connection box. So I would select that there, hit the start connection. And then when our pianos are connected, this indicator would be lit up green, and then I would know our pianos are connected. So if I play a note, you can see on the on-screen keyboard at the bottom that also lights up so that I can see what I'm playing. The student can also see that on their end. And then again, when the student plays, I can see those light up on the piano, on the on-screen piano as well. And then above the keys, there is a velocity indicator. So if I play very softly, the bar does not go up very high, but the louder I play, you can see that indicator increase. So that's very helpful to when you're working on dynamics, when you're working on balance, very helpful tool. And then you can also see the pedals move at the bottom, which as we've all done with our online teaching, I find that's one of the hardest things to work on is pedaling in my online lessons. So let me show you just a quick video now of a student in an online lesson. Let me change my screen sharing to this. And you can see a student where we use Internet MIDI. She is playing, and so you'll be able to see the notes move on the on-screen piano. You can't hear this because Internet MIDI has AV controls built in. And remember, the sound is coming through our pianos, not being screen captured from my computer or the video conferencing software. So that's why you can't hear anything. You're not supposed to be able to hear anything. But this was just a demonstration to see her play the piano and then how it looks for me as I'm watching her. And that was in an online lesson. So that is Internet MIDI. There are several other great software programs by Time Warp Technology or Time Warp Tech, just to mention a few others: Classroom Maestro, Home Concert Extreme, and SuperScore, which is an app for the iPad. If you want to check out any of those, you might want to add a technology component that those could be useful for you and your students in your lessons. So I am the last presenter today for our Remarkable Resources webinar. So thank you all to the wonderful presenters and all of your fantastic ideas and sharing with us today. Thank you so much for everyone for being here. Thank you again to MTNA and NPF for the arrangement of this webinar. And again, this video this webinar will be posted as a recorded video to the NPF website, pianonet.com. Thanks, Dan, for putting that back on the screen so we can see that website. And then thank you all for attending today's session. Thanks for sticking with us a couple of extra minutes here at the end. And we hope to see everyone at the next webinar, which will be on Wednesday, February the 2nd, 2022 at the same time, 12:30, 1:30 time. So with that, we hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. Stay healthy and safe, and we hope it is restful and enjoyable for everyone. So thank you again and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, everyone.